Hello and welcome to another tropical update from Cayman Hurricane Center. I'm Adam McDoom. This morning, early morning, we are talking about newly designated Invest Area 97L out in the main development region in the Atlantic. This is the area of interest that I had mentioned in my update video yesterday, and very early morning this morning, or very late last night, the area of interest has been designated Invest 97L. And the particulars on Invest 97L are that it's located at 10.6 north, 36.3 west. Max winds are about 25 miles per hour. Pressure of 1012 millibars. This system is not really moving very quickly at all. Sort of very much meandering around, give or take less than five knots, so not really moving that quick at all, but a general west to west northwest track is what's expected over the next several days with this system. As mentioned, this invest area generally located at that time the 06Z update was generally speaking about here. Looking on satellite, the area looks more or less like here. But anyway, you can definitely see there is rotation starting to pick up in this area, and it's getting itself better organized. The only issue is with the convective activity. It's not that impressive at the moment. However, it has been flaring up on the north side here, as well as popping up some activity along this area here, and even a few small little specks picking up around there. But not too grand. I'll explain why, and I'll explain how this could very much be changing the further west it moves and the further down in time. But just continuing on here, this is the tropical weather outlook from the National Hurricane Center, and this is our Invest Area 97. The general west to west northwest track is what's expected. The National Hurricane Center is giving this a 30% chance over the next 5 days of this becoming a tropical depression or higher. We could see that percentage increase more and more as time goes forward, potentially. So this is how the area looks on the surface chart. This is the latest surface chart, and basically our invest area is right here, and it is connected to a tropical wave as well as embedded within the monsoon trough. There is the Azores Bermuda High, which is sitting out here, and this high is generally going to drift a little bit off to the north, however, intensifying a bit, and this should have the system have a general nice easy westward track going out in time. There's also been some indications from other models longer range out that suggest that there could be another wave coming off of Africa pretty soon, and that too could have the potential to pick up for development. As it is, the proverbial switch has probably been flipped, and the Atlantic will probably see a possible outbreak with tropical systems over the coming few weeks, and I'll explain a little bit further why that could definitely be the case. But for our particular invest here, this is the latest model guidance and spaghetti plots for the invest area, plus the satellite imagery with the model overlay. And so, as I stated, generally models take it off towards the west, west-northwest, heading towards the Eastern Caribbean. So, as mentioned in yesterday's update, the islands here will need to pay attention to the system as it moves off towards the general direction of west to west-northwest. As you can see, there's still a bit of a distance between our invest area here and the Eastern Caribbean. Closest island would be Barbados to the area, but still very much many hundred miles to the east, southeast of that, and thus a good few days out. Generally speaking, pretty much 2 to 3 days, 3 to 4 to 5 days. So still about generally 5 days away from reaching the islands. So plenty of time to watch, plenty of time to see what this will do, and plenty of time for the models to flip and flop, and we'll get a better handling on this system once it continues further on its track. We get more data, and of course our special line here, 50 west, once the system has passed that, we will start getting recon missions flying into the area to help with getting better data on the system. So that is generally the track forecast for this, but let's have a quick look at the intensity guidance for the sim as well. Why not? So here is the intensity guidance for 97L, and as mentioned during that sort of, let's say 48 hours to about more or less 72 hours time period. This is more or less when the models suggest that this thing could potentially reach tropical storm intensity, with some even suggesting maybe even strong tropical storm or even hurricane intensity coming up to the 5-day mark. That's a pretty bad line there. But yeah, so it's something to watch over the coming days. And again, as said, the Eastern Caribbean should keep a close eye on this. Let's have a look at how this system looks internally, the spin or the rotation in the system. And for that, we take a look at the 850 millibar vorticity level. This is in the lower part of the atmosphere, the 5,000 foot level, the 850 millibar range. And so this is our Invest 97L. As you remember in my video yesterday, I've mentioned how that area was pretty much strung out very thinly and not really building up, but there was a small area building up along 30, but it was very small and very strung out and weak. But now, as we can see, that vorticity has started to bundle up and is starting to come together. As you can see here, you want, you could jump back to my previous video and compare the two vorticity maximums there. Also, as mentioned with that high pressure system to the north, will keep a general westward track for this system, pretty much right through the Caribbean, really. Of course, speeding up speed just a little bit as the trades do tend to change when we get towards there. As mentioned, that Eastern Caribbean graveyard or dead zone. However, the graveyard dead zone tends to a little less as we get into towards August, and because it's more really concerned with the early part of the season when the high pressure tends to be longer during that period, and thus producing higher trades throughout the main development region and into the Caribbean. So as mentioned, this is our high pressure area here, and our system is located more or less about there, and it's off on a general west-west-northwest track, fairly at a fair slow speed. Should start to pick up in speed as it gets past 50, but again, these trades aren't blowing as strong as it was earlier this year, so that won't be too much of an issue for this system. And the other thing is that unlike previous systems that were moving at generally 10 to 15, this one's moving much slower at more 10 to 5. So fairly slow speed, that will help. The other thing that is concerning the system is the Saharan dust and dry air. Even though that there is Saharan dust and dry air, it is, as you can see here, fairly off to its north and northeast and northwest. There is a moisture plume that is covering this whole area here, and so it's sort of helping to protect the Invest from the harsher Saharan dust. But even so, the Saharan dust that is coming off is not really that strong. I mean, this is more or less the strongest bit, and you don't really see a whole lot of this area here, a lot of the pinks and whites. There's a few small areas of it off the very near coastal areas of northern Africa, but it's not spreading out into this area and spreading out across here very heavily, as you would have seen in previous years. So yeah, the Saharan dust is below average overall, and as we get further and further into the season, this will be less of a problem as that starts to retreat further and further towards northern Africa. And also with the monsoon area, monsoonal rains falling across this area, moistening up the grounds along here and helping to minimize the effects of the Saharan dust. So as I mentioned earlier about the sort of suppressed convection that's on our Invest at the moment, and one of the key reasons for it is that we're not in a favorable MJ or Madden-Julius oscillation phase at the moment, and we also are under a suppressed Kelvin wave, which both has a suppressing factor on the amount of convection that builds up over the region. However, and as I've mentioned yesterday about the Kelvin wave inbound and how this could potentially pick up on a tropical outbreak across the Atlantic over the coming weeks. I also mentioned that I didn't have a graphic then, but today I do, and here is this graphic. And as I'll change the color of the graphic here, of my pen here, so you could see it better. So again, the suppressed Kelvin wave here in this region is pretty much knocking out the convection building over our area. And again, our area of interest is generally located in this spot here. And as you can see here, this is the convectively coupled Kelvin wave that's along this area here. And this was actually updated yesterday, as on the 27th, but the forecast for it going forward, as you can see down here, well, this is for next week. And as you can see, change that again, the suppressed part of the Kelvin wave is moving out, and of course the convectively coupled Kelvin wave moves in to the Atlantic basin. And the interesting thing about this is that this is the strongest Kelvin wave seen so far for the Atlantic for the year, should I say. And there are quite a bit of concerns about seeing a possible tropical system outbreak in the Atlantic as this moves through. Also, the shaded blue areas are the MJO base state, and as you can see, this is all the enhanced Madden-Julian pulse, allowing for that convective mass to also build through. So again, next week that should be starting to make its way through the Atlantic, and again going into the second week to August. Here we are. We have ourselves a fairly favorable pattern. You have the positive, Kelvin wave, the convectively coupled Kelvin wave. You also have a fairly favorable MJO base state around the Western Hemisphere, and this should help to promote the activity in the Atlantic basin and potentially allow multiple systems to try and get going, as I said, the proverbial switch being flipped. For our Invest Area 97, for pretty much, I'd say, the rest of this weekend, probably going into next week, will be sort of dull for the system, not really expecting too much from it during that period as it moves through. However, I do think, though, that as we start going through next week, the area of interest will continue to move towards the west. Towards the west-northwest, and start to meet up with this convectively coupled Kelvin wave, and this should allow the system to build further going through the upcoming week. So, as again, the Eastern Caribbean need to monitor this very, very closely, especially next week going forward. Well, that is it for me, pretty much. That is that quick update on the newly designated Invest Area 97L. I will have another update on this system and any potential future Atlantic systems later today. Have a good one.